been a bit since I uploaded a video, but that's usually how it goes. So per the norm, I no longer have a video upload schedule. I'm just trying to make videos as soon as I can. I do have my website up. I just finally got that finished. I had to start from scratch because the last one had so many problems with it. I had to start over. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly I want to do for the articles and how I want to lay them out. So it's a little bit rough, but it'll eventually get there. I also put myself back on Twitter. I put myself back on Instagram. So it's not like I haven't gotten anything done.
Hey, that's new.
Things have just kind of been crazy, but I don't think you need me to tell you that. But I have several video ideas coming up. If you follow me on Goodreads, then you know that I'm in the middle of reading Nightmares. I'm in the middle of reading The Selection by Kira Cass, and I'm trying to get through Shattering. Karen Haley, that's who wrote it. My memory is horrible. I'm getting a lot of work done. But I have several video ideas, mostly because I just watched Brightburn. I'm in the middle of rewatching Midsummer, wondering why my life is the way that it is. You know, speaking of pointless...
This is only the beginning of my true resurrection.
Arriving on a nightmare, praying for a dream.
True resurrection.
But I was kind of thinking yesterday how when we had that trilogy spurt after Hunger Games sort of came on the scene and introduced, you know, the 3-book series, which I feel like is actually a good idea because it's not too long that you have to ask the readers to bear with you for a really long series if you want to see what happens. But it's also not like a duology, so it's too short that you can't really promote it and get it out there, which I think is the main reason why most writers were doing trilogies at the time.
Oh, this seems somehow familiar. Oh, whoa, too hot. Oh, too cold. Well, this doesn't take a genius.
Because now they've moved on to doing anchor series. You have 7 or 8 books, and then it just keeps going and going and going. You're wondering, where is the arc in here?
What you looking at?
Nothing.
But on that, I was thinking about just how many trilogies I was reading, especially at the time where the sequel was kind of pointless. If somebody had actually brought my attention to that, where they literally felt like they could just skip over the second book in the trilogy and it wouldn't have made a difference. It didn't. Nothing changed in the characters, nothing even changed in the circumstances, and it was more like circle jerking. And in all rereading The Selection, I was reminded why I stopped reading it after the second book. I hate cliffhangers, which is kind of hypocritical of me considering that the book I'm writing now has to end on a cliffhanger because there's just so much buildup and so much tension. I wasn't even expecting it to actually be a cliffhanger. I just wanted the book to be done. But there are several writers who will use the cliffhangers as a marketing scheme to get you pulled in and hooked in. Fan fiction writers do it too. It's a hook.
And just what do you think you are doing, Mr. Smith?
Just what you told me, Captain. Carrying out your orders.
My order?
Why, yes, Captain. Didn't you just say to go...
Put her back, you blithering idiot!
It's meant to make you want more, especially if there's so much that hasn't been resolved. If nothing has been resolved in that book, though, what is the point of reading the second one if you know that the second one ended in the same way as the first one? Nothing was resolved, nothing was added, and in The Selection, the first book kind of ended like that. It was kind of like, if I remember right, it's been a while. Like I said, I'm rereading it. And I'm trying to make it through the rest of the series. And it's your typical, you know, oh, it's this kind of government, but then you have the rebellion. And the rebellion is always, it's always present in these trilogies. And the rebellion is supposed to be sort of like the subplot that's supposed to be the continuation for the rest of the series. I think that's what Branded kind of jarred me, because that book ended like it should have been a part of a trilogy, with the first book having But it would have been much better if it had been developed into a trilogy, because it would have allowed the characters to actually come into their own and allowed for world building and other aspects that were actually missing. Because it's not like I hated the book, I hated the book. I hated how they ended it, and I could have seen where it would have been a lot better. But they didn't go that route, so, you know, sucks to be me. But I think it was the way that it just didn't really resolve anything, it didn't add anything. But once I decided to indulge, and I was like, you know what, I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed the writing. Characters were kind of annoying, but I want to see where this goes. So I picked up the second book, and that's where like other aspects were coming in to make it a little spicier and a little more interesting. Yes, there was a love triangle involved, but I was like, you know what? It's fine. I can indulge. And I stopped reading after the second book because she ended it in the same way as the first. Nothing was resolved, nothing changed with characters, nothing changed really with the circumstances, except that the rebellion was taking over. Who would have known? Like, I get if you have one form of government, you're always going to have those people that disagree with it and whatnot. But couldn't we just be a little more subtle? Like, like in Red Queen, why does it have to be all gore and hate and fighting in the first book or in the second book? Like, wouldn't you think that there would be some kind of undermining? But the undermining, like, even in Red Queen, it didn't take long. It didn't develop for very long. As the reader, you're like, well, you know, the government may be shitty, but how do we know that the rebellion isn't shitty? That's kind of why I liked Hunger Games, is because both sides of the coin, no pun intended, just sucked, you know, and finally, you know, it was like at the end of the third book, Katniss realizes this, and she's like, it's just going to be a repeat, and she chooses individuality. And in these books with rebellion, it's such a cliche right now. The reader's not really given a reason to agree with the rebellion, except for maybe one of the characters that they like, or one of the characters that's a good guy is a part of the rebellion. That's not enough of a reason for me. If you want to set up a dystopian government, and you want to set up especially people that's going to rise up and oppose it, there needs to be a level of like rules. There needs to be a set of laws that the writer has to follow, as well as the characters. You can't just do whatever you want and be like, well, people don't like this, so they're going to fight. I mean, look at today. You could look at history, where there are several governments where it was either a long and bloody battle that was only won because allies jumped in, or people are still under the thumb of dictatorship. I mean, take the French Revolution, for instance. You have these people that rise up, but it's different in that the American Revolution, they decided to immediately set boundaries, set laws, and set rules so that they could keep order in a society that wasn't pure anarchy. In the French Revolution, they were murdering people because they had a button with a king's profile on it, but were never really allowed to dive into the rebellion side, except for Hunger Games. I think that's the only instance where they actually let us see what the rebellion is really about and what these people are really fighting for. The revolution doesn't always work. These rebellions that are presented are always presented as the good guys, but they're presented as the good guys without a real reason. And the reader is just sort of supposed to agree for no reason. The video is supposed to be about useless sequels. So the sequels that I actually had in mind were like matched. I thought that Crossed, useless. They were literally just wandering around the desert. They had a few new characters introduced, and I didn't read the third book because the second book was so unforgettable. In Delirium, a few things happened in Requiem before they introduced another character that presented another love triangle in a society where love is pretty much illegal. And I didn't read the third book because it just, the way it ended was the same. It was useless. It was pointless. Wither, I actually loved the first book. It was a little creepy. It was a little on the creepy side, but I think that's why I like it. It was kind of reminded me of Flowers in the Attic. And I love the first book, and I loved it the way they ended it. Even if you end it on a cliffhanger, the main issue is supposed to be resolved. At least the issue that you've laid out in that book. In that book, it was that she was trapped and she didn't know what she was going to do. And they just ended it with her escaping. They didn't end it with her having a plan. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't have anybody that she was running with, I don't think. Like 10 years since I read that book. But the second book undid everything that the first book did. She literally ended up back where she was in the beginning of book one. It's just an endless loop. The sequel literally could have just been cut out. Even Hunger Games, as much as I love that book, most of the sequel could have been left out. I can't say anything about Divergent. I have heard how useless Insurgent was. I have not read it. Divergent, I loved so much. And I thought that it ended on such a good note that I just didn't want to read the rest of the series. And you had this selection where I read the first and I read the second book, and I didn't read anything further because it was just ending in the same way with nothing having been added. I mean, it doesn't have to be full of completely structural stuff that happens. You can have filler and you can have fluff in the book, obviously, and it can still be enjoyed. It's just when the whole book is filler, it kind of ruins the motivation to be able to finish the rest of the series. At least in my case. But I'm just one person. There are plenty of people that have read the whole series, read the whole trilogies. I'm just saying, I think it would be better if the trilogies, if you're planning on making a trilogy, you should try to make every book in the trilogy count and add something. If not for the plot, at least for the characters. I guess I could just title this video Useless Sequels, Useless Rebellions, and Useless Dialogue. I'll see you guys in my next video.